Ladies and gentlemen, Capital G here, and I'm bringing you my second annual top 20 commanders and bottom 10. So how do I determine what's top 20 quality and what's bottom 10 quality? Everything from personal taste, experience playing with and against them, just ideas for putting decks together with those characters. There's many factors involved. Even if a commander is especially popular at large, doesn't mean it's going to be one of my favorites, and vice versa. A powerful commander could easily end up in the bottom 10, and a weaker commander can easily end up in the top 20. Again, it's all to personal taste, personal opinion, experiences, and just observations of the format in general. So with that in mind, actually, one such example, I guess my honorable mention for the top 20 as it were, is my boy Tanazir. Did not make my top 20, even though it's one of my favorites from this year. And the reason Tanazir is one of my favorites, not because Tanazir is powerful, but because when you've got Tanazir and a couple of mana dorks and some +1/+1 counters floating about, and your opponents realize what's happening when you turn sideways, well, Tanazir becomes frightening to the table. Sometimes it's just things like that. But Tanazir did not make my top 20 as much as I love the old flying boy. So instead, let us... actually, let's start with our bottom 10 first, and then we'll go into the top 20. How's that sound? So, my 10, let's say, least favorite commanders. And everything's going to be alphabetical. They're not going to be ordered from 1 to 10, whatever. It's alphabetical. And I'm starting with her. Not even worth learning to pronounce this thing's name. I don't think she's a particularly powerful commander. Obviously, she wants you to discard cards in order to cast her. And she's cheap to cast for a 3/3 creature. I'll give her that. But the idea that all you really want to do is make food and sacrifice food to have creatures deal damage to themselves. Yes, there are a few cards that help with that strategy, but not much. And honestly, she is not fueling your game plan. Your game plan is entirely in the 99. She's just there for the colors and for the possibility of, tutoring out a cookbook. So, unfortunately, I had to put her on the dislike list. Iruf Tormented Prophet. Only just came out. How do I hate her so much already? Just the fact that you're basically, yes, you're getting some card advantage, but you have to use that card advantage on your turn, otherwise you lose it all. It's a card advantage, but very, very restrictive, and what ends up eventually happening is that as your hand empties, and you're relying solely on those 2 cards that you exile every turn, well, you're just going to run out of gas. And soon enough, you won't even be able to respond to what your opponents are doing. So, no, I don't think she's very good. I've seen, if you've got some way of generating, massive amounts of treasure constantly, then you could probably mill through your deck that way. But other than that, I don't think she's worth the effort compared to others in her colors. Someone else in her colors not worth the effort is Fairy Dad, Devil's Chosen. The problem here is that you've got an Izzet commander that wants you to roll dice in order to fuel a Voltron strategy, which I could get behind, but the problem is that a lot of the dice rolling cards that exist don't really forward that Voltron strategy we're going for. It'd be like roll dice to see how much damage you do, or roll dice to see how much treasure you get, but none of it is roll dice to see how much power she gets, for example. Maybe Baldur's Gate will have better cards to synergize with her when it comes out, but for the time being, there's not enough cards to support the dice rolling and the Voltron strategy at the same time at this stage of the game. A legitimately powerful commander that I'm not a huge fan of is Lathril. Because really, Lathril does what elves have already been doing for years. And that's, making more elves. Whoopee! And, I mean, to Lathrill's credit, you could end the game a bit more quickly just by tapping a bunch of those elves. However, again, it's just elves making more elves, and it's nothing new. Something that is new but still not all that great is Lind, Cheerful Tormentor. I'm not a fan of curses. I'm really not. I mean, I like throwing out a curse here and there, but a curse as the deck theme doesn't really get there. It can disrupt the table a little bit, but by the end of the day, it doesn't really translate into a win. Most curses do not translate into a win. The best curse actually is in white, believe it or not, so we don't even have access to that. And the idea here is to be able to get the full benefit from her abilities, you have to curse yourself, and then she has to stick around a whole round of the table. So, I love the art, I love the story it tells. But is this the curse commander that we've been wanting? No, I don't think so. Something we definitely did not want. I mean, we wanted new Audric, especially when we found out that Audric became cursed and became a vampire. We wanted that. Then we saw what he did. Like taking all of your team's keywords and turning them into blood tokens. I don't know. It's not that you can't do anything with the blood tokens. There are synergies that exist, but the reality is it's not what we want from Audric. He deserved a better card. Even Gavin has at least hinted at agreeing to this. So keep your eyes open. We will see a new Audric in a couple years' time, more than likely, and hopefully a better Audric. But the payoff that we're getting for having all of those keywords is just disheartening and very disappointing. Sigrid, God favored, because White needed more commanders that were not actually good. We got Sigrid, protection from gods, and I guess she can lead a half decent flash tribal deck once White has enough cards with flash to cast. For the time being, that's not the case. She can exile a creature that's attacking until she leaves the battlefield, but it's also the fact that she doesn't even exile the creature permanently. She leaves the battlefield, our opponent gets the creature back. I mean, it just doesn't actually help anything. So that's the disappointment here with Sigrid, God favored. Now, Turgid, God of Fight. God of Fright, in fact. Very frightening to sit across the table from. And yes, I did build a deck around her for the channel. As it turns out, she is not a lot of fun to play against. Fun to pilot. Very powerful to pilot. Not fun to play against. It basically comes down to, you throw down an Awakener Swile, for example. You throw it on a Mind Slicer, and then all of a sudden, you have an army. Just like that. You just have an army out of nowhere, and it's usually consisting of your opponent's resources. It gets super powerful to play with, but then the rest of the table is ready to shuffle up and go to the next game. And that is why a lot of Turgid decks will get built. They'll get played, 2, 3, 4 times, and they get taken apart. If you want, you can always play the Turgid Lantern side of things and go for just the infinite mana and dump it through here. So there is that option if you wanted to build a Turgid's Lantern deck rather than a Turgid deck. But again, notice that Turgid decks don't stay together very long. They're just not fun to play against. Over to Valky, God of Lies. I was never a fan of the card. Not like the front face is not actually bad. In fact, 2 mana for a 2/1 that each opponent reveals their hands, exiles a creature, and they exile the creature until Valky leaves the battlefield. So that means the owner of those creatures' cards get them back. But as long as those creatures remain exiled, he can copy them. But the problem with the front side is that he dies, and at 1 toughness, he will die. Everybody gets their cards back. The problem with the backside is for 7 mana, you're getting a card from the top of each player's library, but you have no real control of what those are. Sometimes you might get something awesome, sometimes you get a basic land. Sometimes you get one of those tap lands. I don't know, it's always nice to play for your opponent's resources, perhaps, but at 7 mana to get, you know, your first pile of those, and then maybe have the opportunity to use them. And then 7 to 9 to 11 to 13. Like, the more Tybalt gets taken off the table, the fewer cards you're going to get. So, that is why I don't think Valky/Tybalt is all that good. And last on the list for my 10 least favorite, worst, etc. commanders is Volatile Fire Giant Duke. And I have a couple of these in foil for my bundle, which is kind of annoying because he's not all that good. I mean, you're getting a 7/3 with trample. I guess that's pretty fine, especially if you want to go mono red Voltron, for example. But what he actually wants to do is get dealt damage. He's got 3 toughness, but he wants to take damage. It's like you breathe on him on the wrong way and he goes to your graveyard. And yet he wants to take damage so he can, you know, go that little bit deeper into the dungeon. Unfortunately, I mean, yes, you can build that deck and make it so that he can be a lot tougher. You throw like a Slag Worm Armor in there and changes the game a little bit. But unfortunately, not all that interesting, not all that worth the effort. And sorry, Zalto, 10 worst you belong. Now, as for the 20 best, again, these are, I haven't built decks for all of these. I haven't even seen decks for all of these characters yet. But even the ones that I have not run into a deck for has very interesting upside and potential and explores new spaces. Carth the Lion is my first and best example of this. Really the first time we've had a legendary creature that really, really interacts with and cares about other planeswalkers. Basically having our planeswalkers' loyalty abilities cost 1 more loyalty to activate. That's not really a cost. It's just instead of you putting 2 loyalty, you put a 3rd one. Instead of, you know, -3 loyalty to destroy a creature, it's -2 loyalty. That's amazing. And Carth at this point in time stands alone as the only card to do something like this. Yes, he is restricted to Golgari colors. That's really the only downside here. But even in Golgari colors, guess what you have access to? Doubling season. So, and the fact that when he enters the battlefield, you get to look at your top 7 cards, get a Planeswalker. When one of your Planeswalkers hits the graveyard, as long as he's on the battlefield, you get to look at your top 7, get another Planeswalker. Obviously, he's got a clear plan, clear path, and explores a new design space that we haven't seen on another card as of yet. Moving on to Asika, God of the Tree. 2 ways to go. You can go Legendary Tribal and play the front side and just tap for more mana. Or, and this is what most people do, and I can't blame them, is you go the Prismatic Bridge. Being an enchantment means it's very difficult to remove in comparison. There's a lot more creature removal out there than there is enchantment removal. It's Wooburg, and you can put whatever legendary creatures, as few or as, well, whatever creatures or planeswalkers you want, as few or as many as you want. So if you really want to hyper-focus your deck, you go down to maybe 3, 4, 5 creatures. Or if you just want to play big splashy things, you just fill your deck with big splashy creatures, huge powerful planeswalkers, and just whatever you flip you play with. That seems like a lot of fun to pilot. As for the rest of the table, I mean, you never know really what you're going to expect when the Prismatic Bridge comes down. You know it's going to be big and splashy, but you don't really know what you're going to get from game to game. And that's kind of what makes it very fun and very intriguing. Moving on to Extus or Reek Overlord. Remember this one? It's a commander creature on the front face, and it's a sorcery on the back. So, I've seen a Reek played on both sides. I've seen the front face or Reek deck where You put creatures in your graveyard, and you get card advantage by casting instants and sorceries to get those cards back. He's also got double strike, so he can turn sideways and make life totals go down very quickly. Alternatively, and this is probably the stronger of the strategies, is that you play Awaken the Blood Avatar. So by casting this sorcery from your command zone, yes, it can go back to the command zone. Yes, a commander tax applies, but when you cast the spell, you can sacrifice creatures to reduce the cost by 2 for each. So it's basically got a built-in Ashna's Altar for casting the spell. That's pretty cool. So you go Mardu tokens, because regardless of what you want to do, the second you show an Auric, because it's got the black, the white, and even the red down here on the backside, you're playing Mardu colors. So you can play all 3 colors, create a bunch of tokens, and then just go nuts. Sack those tokens. Sack those tokens, play black, red, get an avatar. 3/6 red avatar that when it attacks deals 3 damage to each opponent. And if you're generating enough tokens, you can do this over and over again, even 3-4 times in a turn. Get a bunch of these avatars out, turn sideways, and just watch the table burn. Super fun. Gallia, Kindler of Hope. The best commander precons came from AFR. I don't know if the Forgotten Realms set was super powerful per se. I know it wasn't, depending on who you talk to, it isn't a very well beloved set, but the commander decks that came out for it are all insane. They're really powerful out of the box. Pretty much all of the commander options that they give you are excellent. And Gallia is just one example of this. A Voltron commander that cares about both equipment and auras, so you can choose which one to focus on, or you could still rock both. You're not bound by any rules per se. It's as long as you're casting, as long as it's on top of your library and it's an aura or an equipment, you can cast it. You can attach it to her. I think it's a her. I'm not sure. And on top of that, vigilance, so attacks and blocks very effectively. Like you're not lowering your shields when you swing out. So super powerful. Not replacing any of my Voltron commanders personally, but for those who do play it, I cannot blame them. Gisa, Glorious Resurrector. So what's the difference between Gisa and Tergrid? So Tergrid can not only punish you for having your creatures die, but also punish you for having creatures discarded from your hand. And she gets to keep those creatures as long as she likes, swing with them as much as she wants. Gisa only cares about creatures when they die. She has to still be on the battlefield at the beginning of your upkeep to get those creatures back. They can swing no more than once because they've gained Decayed. And it's just a much more fun commander. It's much more, I guess, more easy. It's easier to interact. Still very powerful, and still very annoying if you don't have the answer when she comes out and starts killing creatures. But definitely a much more fair magic card. Still a very powerful magic card. And yeah, I mean it's just Gisa. Gisa's just a cooler character overall on top of all of that. Moving on to Jorn, God of Winter. Yes, I did something comparatively trolly and built a Cauldron the Rhymestaff deck earlier this year. But even if you focus on Jorn himself, you can go mono green. You can use any combination of these colors to build Jorn. When it attacks, untap each no permanent you control, which is a very powerful trigger. If you do choose to play the black side, the black and blue side, you get to cast no permanents from your graveyard. So very powerful. Very powerful on both sides, and just a great combination of abilities. And you can, as long as you're playing a bunch of snow, you can do whatever you want with it. And it was only a matter of time before we see more snow, because they've been printing it more and more frequently in recent years. Moving on to Koma, Cosmos Serpent. And by the way, for all my viewers that have watched the Koma deck tech, thank you for making it easily my most popular deck tech. Easily, head and shoulders above everything else. I know it's not like huge numbers compared to some of the more mainstream Magic channels. However, I am so pleased with how well that did. And I can't blame people for liking this commander. It's very splashy Simic commander. It's not just play a land, gain more. Play a land, play more lands. That's not what Koma is about. Koma wants to, dominate the board and end the game. And that's what Koma does. You get the 6/6, you get a 3/3 on every upkeep. Yes, you have to defend it from exile-based removal. As long as you're able to do that, and you're running Simic colors, you should be able to. As long as you can ward off all those Swords to Plowshares and what have you, Koma's just going to give you an army, and that army's going to give you the victory. It is amazing as commander. Also amazing is Minse, Beloved Ranger. This was probably my favorite deck tech on the channel, in fact. Again, just because you can do whatever you want with Minse. You can turn it, you can make it Naya Beatdown. You can make it all about Boo. Make Boo humongous and smack people around with that. You can use Minsk as a sacrifice outlet because, hey, read that text. X can in fact be 0. There's no errata or rulings that say otherwise. You can just use Minsk as a sac outlet and do some combo shenanigans with that. So, lots of sneaky things you can do. You can do big beat down things, or you can do really sneaky things. I love Minsk for this, and that's why it's again my favorite deck tech of the year, and one of my favorite decks in paper too for this year. Orvar the All Form. Now, I actually played this in Brawl rather than Commander, but definitely more powerful in Commander because there's a lot more random wacky spells that you can use to target your own creatures. And why is that important? Because hey, you target one of your own creatures, you get a copy of that creature. And just being able to have an army explode that way. All of a sudden, cards like Twiddle have a home. Twiddle, of all things, 1 blue to tap or untap a creature. So, there you go, Orvar. Just creating some space, make some more big sea monsters. Or whatever else you want to make, because, hey, he's a shapeshifter, he's not bound to any single tribe. Osgir the Reconstructor. Huge game changer for Boros / Lorehold. The red and white color combination. Just giving them something new to do. Instead of just being about attacky stuff. I mean, yes, Osgir can be very attacky. Being a 4/4 with vigilance. But being able to, sacrifice artifacts to buff the team. Or even be able to recur the artifacts. By paying X, tapping him, and exiling an artifact from your graveyard, you get 2 of those artifacts into play under your control. That's absolutely fantastic. Really cool utility, really new direction for Boros, and I hope they, print more cards with this kind of thinking in mind. Doesn't have to be white and red to interact well with artifacts, because mono white can do it too. I mean, I already run lots of artifacts and other historic spells in Teshar, but Oswald specifically cares about the artifacts. And we basically have a birthing pod in artifact form coming out of your command zone. How is that not incredible? He doesn't have a bunch of decks to his name just yet, according to EDH anyways, but 2 mana 2/2 that can, do what he does. You don't turn a 3-cost artifact to a 4-cost and just go up the ladder from there and gain all sorts of card advantage that way in white. It's incredible. Piru the Volatile. I've also built this one in paper. The list I have currently is not exactly the one on the deck check. Of course, I put up the deck tech and then I kind of evolved from there. But Piru has proven to be a great commander both as a Mardu control and as Mardu legendary tribal. You can go through both strategies here. for those who may not be in the know or who are newer to the Commander format, it used to be known as Elder Dragon Highlander, and it was named after the original Elder Dragons, such as Nicobolus. They all had similar casting costs, double tricolors and 2. And they all had this drawback of having to, pay more mana every upkeep just to keep them on the battlefield. But they all flew. They were all 7/7s. And in fact, the reason the commander damage rule exists is because they were 7/7, and they figure that, if you let one of these dragons hit you 3 times, you deserve to lose. So, yeah. But in the case of Piru, unlike his elder brethren, shall we say, it actually does something when it dies, because everything else, all the others want to stay on the battlefield as much as possible. He's okay with dying, because when he dies, he deals 7 damage to each non-legendary creature. And notice that Piru has lifelink, which means that this dies, you could be gaining, if you're killing 7, 8, 9 creatures, you're getting, 63 life if you kill 9 creatures. So that is incredible, the kind of life swings you can get. Or you can just pay the mana, keep it on the battlefield, and smack somebody in the face 3 times. The choice is yours. It is amazing. A whole lot of fun to play. Yes, the 8 mana is tough. You're playing a lot of mana rocks to power this out, but once you do... Prosper Tome-Bound. Very, very popular. Again, from the Forgotten Realms Commander series. Doesn't necessarily give you a win condition or anything like that, but does give you a lot of value out of the command zone, being able to not only, get cards that you can exile cards from the top of your library that you can play even if he doesn't stick around the whole turn cycle, but also getting you extra treasures whenever you cast a card from exile. And it doesn't matter how the card was exiled, as long as it's something you can still cast. Say, let's use Jessica as well as the example. Lets you exile the top 3 cards of your library, and you can cast them for the rest of the turn. Well, Prosper will reward you with those treasures if he's on the battlefield. Just saying. So yeah, Prosper deck's super, super popular. Give him some sort of way to deal damage directly to creatures, because he's got the Death Touch. That's surprisingly relevant. People kind of skip out on it, but it is in fact a very relevant keyword ability here too. So lots of fun, lots of value for Mardu, which something that's new space for Mardu. Mardu is not usually, well, not Mardu, but Rakdos, in fact, because Rakdos usually likes to burn out, throw all their cards out there, whereas Prosper is a bit more patient. Moving on to Runo Stromkirk. Also brand new. It's like, how do I already know he's cool? I mean, look what he does. He rewards you for you got a creature in your graveyard, and he'll put it back on top of your library. If you flip over the top card of your library and it's a creature of mana value 6 or greater, he turns from a vampire into a kraken. So now we know that krakens are more powerful than vampires. It's been confirmed officially by Wizards of the Coast. Regardless, it's basically Sea Monster Tribal in Dimir colors. It's got a cool way of getting there. And on top of that, this creates copies of your Sea Monsters. When this attacks, you create a tapped attacking token that's a copy of another attacking creature. And it's 2 tokens if that creature that it's copying is a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent. I mean, you can't tell me that's not cool. I haven't had a chance to play Runo Stromkirk yet. Actually, I think someone proxied Runo and tried a preliminary build, and it looked like it was a lot of fun. And I'm gonna probably do a tech on him. I'm gonna try and do a tech before the end of the year on Runo, because again, that's just awesome. Tiamat easily. I mean, I haven't checked my numbers on EDH Rec when it comes to Tiamat, but how could it not be the most popular commander of the year? 7 mana, 7/7 flying. Go search your deck for 5 dragons. They say 5 dragons not named Tiamat. This is commander. There's no Tiamat in your deck. Go draw 5 dragons, put them in your hand. Boom. They could be changelings too, by the way. We did get a lot of changelings in all colors, really. So, It could be a thing, but you're going for big dragons. So there's nothing more to say here. Just a dragon lets you get more dragons, and it's already big. There's no other drawback other than the fact that that you have to pay 7 mana in Wooburg. But if you've already decided you're gonna build 5-color dragons, that's easy, and he's a lot cheaper to get these days than say Dragon. Trilacera, Moon Dancer. White and a green for this 2/2, and it is a Johnny's Primate deck. But I mean, it actually when you say it, a Johnny's Primate deck, you realize how good it's going to be. Gain life, she gets bigger. You get the Scry, which is a nice way to fix up your cards a little bit. You're actually getting a lot of value from this uncommon. And that's why I decided to include her in the list this year. Volo, Guide to Monsters. The one downside to Volo, I mean, everyone who puts together a Volo list is taking sort of the best beast, the best elf, the best shaman, the best warlock, for example, or whatever classes exist. And yes, if you just take with the best of each race and class, all the decks are going to look pretty much the same. But even if you go down to say like the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th best of each race and class, you're still going to have an amazing deck. It's still going to be a blast to play, and you'll be able to do different things with that. So yes, Volo Guide to Monsters makes the list just because you can, pick your favorite beast, pick your favorite frog, do whatever you want. Wilhelm the Rock Cleaver. I was considering if I want to put this in best or worst. It's kind of one of those funny things where, like the power level is there, the playability is there, and I kind of wanted to put it in the worst for the same reasons that we put Lathril, because there's a ton of zombie commanders already. Did we need another one? Did we need a more powerful one? I guess the difference being that the answer is yes, we did need another one. And the reason for that is that the best ones, like say the Scarab God, are out of people's price range, and it's not as readily available. Like Gisa and Giralf. As much as I like Gisa and Giralf, and I've done a deck tech for them a long time ago, they don't hold a candle to Wilhelm. They do something completely different, but they definitely don't hold a candle to him. So yeah, I mean, unlike Lathril, I think zombies actually needed another Dimir commander, and that's why I ended up putting it on the best. Also, just the amount of play he's been getting as of late. Wolfgar of Icewind Dale. Yes, it's just Gruul Smashy, but it's Gruul Smashy that rewards you for going Gruul Smashy because it triggers your combat triggers an additional time. That's cool. Nothing else does that. That's actually a new ability. So that's why Wolfgar is here. That and the teeth. That smile. It's like, are you sponsored by Crest? How could you not be? And lastly, and not a creature, by the way, that's 19 creatures. Our last commander is Grist the Hunger Tide. I say not a creature. He's sometimes a creature. Most importantly, when you're building your deck and when Grist is sitting in your command zone, it's a creature. Therefore, and a legendary one at that. So therefore, Grist, even though it says Planeswalker on the card, can be your commander. So just for that design space alone is why he's here. Like the abilities are not new or interesting by any means. It's just Golgari putting stuff in the graveyard. It's kind of what Golgari's always done, but just taking the form of a planeswalker that sometimes counts as a creature. Like in concept, you can have him, if Grist ends up in your graveyard, you can actually bring him back into play with Unearth, a 1-mana sorcery that brings back a creature of same C3 or less from your graveyard to play. You could do that. So Just like interesting little shenanigans like that is what makes Grist, you know what, a lot more interesting, a very new space, and that's why I've included him in my top 20 of 2021. And I'd like to thank everyone for watching that and sticking with me for the past, little over half an hour, in fact. Oops. So with that in mind, Tanazir and I are going to say bye for now, and we will see you next time.